As we dive into your story, we mentioned it earlier, you're entering your 7th year here at Georgia Southern. Also spent 10 years in the professional ranks, over 300 professional matches, and we've done a little bit of digging and talked to a couple of people that may or may not remain anonymous through this. And the first question that I was told that I have to ask you, is this the man who wrecked the buffet at the Harrow Club this morning?
Yes, that's it. I know who that is. Yeah, that's Mike Fritz and I worked together at the New England Revolution, and he was the athletic trainer, and of course that's a line from Beverly Hills Cop. That's one of my favorites, and he used to regale me with that one, a story about Mike and I. We watched the very first Patriots Super Bowl win. We happened to be in the middle of Brazil, and it took us about a day to find a place that would show us the Super Bowl. And of course, we're watching it in Portuguese in the middle of this Brazilian bar, and Vinatieri kicks the field goal, and of course he and I are jumping around, and we're the only people in the place that know what's going on. So Mike's a great friend and a good Boston guy and a good Boston fan. He's got a good sense of humor too, so that's pretty funny.
Actually, not Mike that gave me that.
Oh, who's that?
Brad Feldman.
Well, Brad's connected with Mike, so he knows the story. So Brad Feldman is the head of media up with the New England Revolution, and he knows where all the bodies are buried. So he's used that line a couple times as well. So those are good times up there. And I always laugh. People say like the pros think it's all heartless, and they don't care about people. And I actually thought it was quite the opposite. I actually thought we all got along really, really well. And Brad had a fantastic relationship with the coaching staff and a lot of the players. And Mike Fritz is the trainer. Like all of us were very, very close. And obviously we had some success together. We won a couple of Eastern Conference championships. We lost an MLS Cup final together. And it was a little bit more friendly than people would think. And I would think it's that way at a lot of top teams, NBA, NFL. It's a business, but at the same time too, you're still talking about people. You're still trying to connect with people, and having that sense of humor, I think, is important.
You got to know those guys between 2000 and 2003 when you were with the New England Revolution, and then you go back in a different role when you're at Boston College in 2014, 2015, doing radio and being a radio analyst for the New England Revolution on 98.5, the Sports Hub. Talk about what that was like. How'd you get into it, first off? Yeah,
well, I have Brad to thank for that. So, again, I got great contacts. So they approached me about doing some radio work, which I was intrigued with, and basically what they were doing was they were doing the TV simulcast of what they were showing on TV. They would have on the radio, but they needed a pregame, halftime, and a postgame show, and I was involved in that, and I loved it. I found it really interesting, and I have a ton of respect for guys like yourself, because you guys can think on your feet, and you can come up with stories, and you have fans calling in, and it's tough to keep on top of all of it. But I came away really impressed, and then I did a game on TV. I did color with Brad, and Brad's like the consummate professional. I think he's been doing it for 20 some odd years, and of course I felt like a rookie, but he was helping me through it the whole time, and really, really enjoyed it. But I came away with a lot of respect for the media. It's not just like a fan sitting around talking about the game. You really do have to kind of set the scene up for the person watching on TV or listening on radio. And I have to admit, I listen to TV or radio, and I have more respect for the media now, because you do really have to think on your feet.
You listen to it different? Or are you trying to critique people now?
No, I wouldn't do that. I'm sure there's plenty of people critiquing me right now, so this horrible accent.
You've seen soccer at a lot of different levels, a lot of the high levels, both at the collegiate ranks and in the professional side of it. How much did that help you being able to take it into the media side? Yeah,
it does make a difference, but again, it's just like being a top player getting into coaching. I think it can help you, but it's not gonna make the difference. So it's the same thing. My knowledge of the game, and I wouldn't act as a pundit. I tried to act more like to analyze it. I didn't want to be a personality. I didn't want to, say something about a player or a coach in a despairing way. I prefer to analyze what I saw. But there's some guys that make a lot of money, and that's what I notice now. You see the guys that want to be in Britain, they call it a pundit. So that's a guy just like, and he really just tears people to shreds and tries to make a name for himself off the back of other people's failures. And I think that's one thing I came into with my knowledge of the game and respect for the game, that I would never do that to anybody in any sport. And certainly fans have every right to look at it the way they want, or they're the ones that pay the money. They're the ones that come to the games or watch on TV or listen on the radio. But I feel there's a professionalism that you need to have when you're on the TV or the radio. When you're in someone in my position, certainly someone who's coming in just to fill in, and obviously somebody who is doing it for a living full time, they can do it however they want. Brad Feldman's a top announcer. I wouldn't accuse him of being a homer, but you can hear in his voice how happy and excited he is when the Revolution succeed and do well. But for me, that's one of the top announcers in America. So I'm glad he reached out. I'm actually surprised he's watching.
You were the associate head coach and recruiting coordinator for Boston College for a couple of years, spent time at Clemson under a legendary staff there. When you get to work with and for so many different people that you look up to, how much better does that make the experience?
Oh, without a doubt. So, Mike Noonan, Mike and I worked together at Brown in the mid-'90s, and when I left MLS, he asked me if I'd come back and join him at Clemson. And, I'd say one of the reasons why I'm at Georgia Southern was because of my time at Clemson, and my time at Clemson reinforced to me that I wanted to be at a big Southern school that had big football. I saw firsthand that, it really drives the university, it drives the department, and obviously you have respect for the other sports, especially at Clemson. You had Jack Leggett in baseball and Brad Brunell for the basketball. So, the athletic department at Clemson was amazing, but it just reinforced to me that I wanted to be at a place like that. And for me, Clemson and Georgia Southern have a lot of similarities. But in regards to Mike and then Ed Kelly at Boston College, like, they're two different guys, like two fantastic people, but they're just two different kinds of guys, and both really, really top coaches. So I don't know what the analogy would be, trying to compare and contrast coaches from different places, but both top coaches, great motivators, really good minds for the game, but they just did it in a different way. And I can't say one was better than the other. Mike's won a national championship, which I was absolutely over the moon. My son and I went up to Raleigh to try and support them up there this past fall. But Ed had great success as well, and we went to a national quarterfinal, and we were just probably an inch away from going to the Final Four. So I think when we talk about success as coaches, obviously we want championships, we want on-the-field success, but those are two guys that really impacted people on and off the field. Which at the end of the day is really our job, is to make sure that we're helping these young people kind of navigate the college experience and try and have some success, win championships, but at the same time too, making sure they're making good decisions, they're excelling academically, and I certainly learned from two of the best with those two.
You had spent time in the college ranks, both as a head coach and an assistant, before going to the pro ranks. How difficult was it to go from professional soccer back into college athletics?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it was difficult. It wasn't difficult for me to go from college to pros because I was a goalkeeper specialist. So similar to being a quarterback coach, you really need to develop that relationship with those 2-3 guys. And as long as my relationship with the goalkeepers was good, then everybody else thought I was great. And then eventually I started to get a bigger role and started to work with people. So John Harks is the head coach up in Greenville. He comes down here when he plays Tormenta. We see each other all the time. And this is a guy that's played in World Cups and someone I was fortunate enough to work with, and we have a great relationship. But it all started from being a goalkeeper coach, and you really have to just keep those 2-3 guys ticking over and playing well, and then you start to move up. And eventually I was a first assistant and reserve team coach and all that. But yeah, to get to your question, it was difficult. It was difficult to go from the pros back down to college. It's difficult to coach in front of 40, 50,000 people, and then you come to a college game and perhaps there's a couple hundred people, and especially when we took Clemson was really on a tough time. And what Mike Noonan's done in the basically the 10 years that he's been here, it's just at Clemson's nothing short of a miracle. What he's done to take Clemson from where they were up to eventually winning the national championship in the fall. But that was a tough one going right in. And Clemson's as good as you're going to get when it comes to a college job. But I definitely noticed the difference. And it took me a while. It took me a while to kind of adjust to that. But The kids are great. We're working with college young men, and obviously I don't coach women, but young men, young women. They have a lot of energy. You feel like you'd have an impact on them and help them, during a time in their life where they need a voice. And some kids come from great households, and some kids come from tough households. And I think either way, you can provide a voice for them that they need at that time in their life. And I think that's where I got my head around the fact that I was back in college, and it was a good decision. And obviously went from Clemson to Anderson, then the Boston College, and then this opportunity down here at Georgia Southern, and we couldn't be happier with it. It's been fantastic.
One of your last years in professional soccer, in 2009, you became the first American citizen to work in British pro soccer with Livingston. How important was that to you, and how much? I know it's something that you take a lot of pride in.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie Kelly still thinks I was crazy, so he always asks me why I went over there. So, and in some ways, he's not wrong, because there's things that don't correlate from the professional game to the college game. So, I worked at Livingston, and I was fortunate enough to work with Paul Hegarty, who was a big-time former player and a really top coach and top person. But eventually I was the head coach for a little while, but I was the head coach for 44 days. So you say 44 days to anybody, they say, what the heck were you doing? But professional sports, and certainly soccer in the UK, is so volatile that I think 44 days I lasted more than some people. So, but I remember sitting in for a college interview, and athletic director saying, "I love your resume, but can you tell me what happened at Livingston?" And I burst out laughing. I said, "Yeah, it doesn't really resonate too well with a college AD." But yeah, that's part of it. If you're going to go into that world, and I'm sure, top college football coaches that have gone into the NFL, like a Nick Saban, and he goes in there, it's just completely different. And I really took to it personally, but it's quite volatile from a personal standpoint, and certainly if you have a family and things like that. So I think any sport is like that, NBA, NFL, any coach that decides to go from college into the pros, there's definitely a transition. But I loved it. I loved how intense it was, and particularly over in Scotland, there'll be things that maybe aren't great, but all the right things are right on, like the passion for the game, the commitment, the way the fans are. It's their national game. It's something they take very serious. And for a small country, it's produced some fantastic players and teams. And so my mother's Scottish, so I'm proud of my Scottish background and proud of my time over there. But sometimes I look back at it, I was like, that was a crazy time. So, like I said, Ed Kelly thought I was crazy, so he might be right.
In your over 25 years of coaching in college, it's something that we've talked about a little bit over the last couple of years, but in your 25 years, Georgia Southern is the longest stint that you've had in one spot.
Yeah.
You said you're very proud of that because you got to see it from a lot of different perspectives. Yeah. Talk about that and how important that is to you.
Yeah, I think that, I try and mentor young coaches, and, I was ambitious. So especially as an assistant, I do think you have to go where the work takes you. And, so there was times that I was a head coach when I was at Assumption and Anderson. Those were two Division II jobs, and they were good jobs. I really enjoyed them, and I felt in both of those jobs I could stay there for 20 years, but is that really what I wanted to do? So, when I kind of bounced from job to job, it was never really anything but just trying to push myself and move forward. And then when you're an assistant coach, it definitely can get like that. But, I've been looking for a venue, a project, a place where I could put my roots down and really try and create something. And, we felt it when I went down for the interview and the timing of it with my wife, with our young children. We just felt this was the place to kind of, create that project. So like I said, the first 4 years pre-COVID, we won the Sun Belt for the first time in the history of the program. We lost in the Sun Belt Championship in 2018. We were 10 minutes away from going to the NCAA tournament for the first time in the history of the program. So those 4 years were very, very competitive. And then, we took it on the nose in COVID, and I'm the one that has to kind of own that and live with it. I'm not going to use that as an excuse, but it was a factor. That's why I try to explain to people, like the year that football had during COVID, that wasn't a good year. That was a great year. for them to have the year that they had and then go down and win the bowl game out in New Orleans, I don't care what anybody says. That was a tough year to work with young people, and they had a great year. So post-COVID, we're on our way back. Like I said, the team I thought we had last year was very young and very talented, and we're going to build on that again this year. So, going into the 7th year, and I'm very proud to be here, and we're very happy here. And, I feel like I'm an advocate for this part of the world, and sometimes it's the people that from down here I'm convincing how great it is. So, and it's normal, I guess, if you're from Boston, you take for granted the things you have in Boston, and sometimes you need an out-of-towner to tell you how great it is. But my wife and my boys and I, we love Statesboro. We love Brooklet, where we live, and I love the weather. I love the location. My wife went to St. Mary's with my youngest yesterday and took the ferry out to the island and rode around their bikes. And it's just like a great part of the world in between Charleston and Jacksonville. And we feel very privileged to be here. So it's something that I don't take for granted. I didn't come here to put my feet up. I didn't come down here to hang out. I came down here to win championships. I've always felt it was a long-term project. I think the teams that Georgia Southern has had over their 40 years, they've had some really eclectic, talented teams for sure. But I think the 4 years that we had previous to COVID, those were 4 really strong years. And I think those are, that's the platform that I'm building to move forward as we go into this new Sun Belt.
Finally, before we let you go, one final thing. Brad told me to make sure to tell you that Larry Bird wasn't the best ever.
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. It's tough to hear that. It's funny, when I was growing up, Bernard King was my favorite player, and Bernard King was a New York Knick, and I thought Bernard King was the greatest player I ever saw. But the Boston people are funny about Larry Bird. We really, he means a lot to us, and I always see stories about like French Lick, Indiana, getting overrun with people from Boston. They just go there and take pictures and everything. So, yeah, it's tough to talk bad about Larry Bird. I'm a little disappointed in Brad, but I'm not surprised.
Murph, really appreciate you taking the time tonight to be our special guest host. Really appreciate what you do for athletics.
No, thank you. I enjoy speaking about the other teams, and it's an exciting time of year with all these different things going on. So certainly the teams that are going into their tournaments, we wish them the very best. And then, obviously with the golfs and softball and baseball, it's just exciting times for them right now. And track as well. It's with Kelly Carter, all the great work that he does. So it's great working at a place like this. There's always something going on. I was trying to take notes today, and there's like so many things going on. I'm really impressed you can keep track of them all.
We figured it out somehow.
That's right.
Georgia Southern baseball at home this weekend against the Georgia State Panthers. Panthers come in atop the Sun Belt Conference. Georgia Southern 2 games back, tied for Troy in 3rd place. But it'll be 6:30 on Thursday and Friday, 2 o'clock on Saturday. Until this weekend, appreciate John Murphy once again, head mitten soccer coach here at Georgia Southern. But for John Murphy, this is Colin Lacy saying so long, everybody.
You've been listening to Inside Eagle Nation, powered by Learfield, the official podcast of Georgia Southern Athletics.